All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Pop Goes the Legal, where we'll be covering the legal issues around pop culture. My name is Zach. I'm joined by Raquel Levy. More importantly, we are thrilled to be joining by an attorney who is doing the same thing at a much higher level, I would say, Omar Serrato. Omar is the managing attorney at Serrato Law and Associates and host of the popular legal commentary podcast, The Titled Lawyer, which has garnered over 20,000 listeners. Known for his sharp, unfiltered take on high-profile legal issues in the media, Omar offers accessible and insightful analysis on cases capturing public opinion, the ones that everyone is talking about. Omar, thank you for joining us.
That's a pleasure.
Today we'll be discussing something that kind of everyone in the firm was excited for us to talk about. Again, seemed like a great way to kick it off. It's Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni.
Yes, the case of the century. So they say.
Case of the century here. Case of maybe at least the year.
Yeah.
Or the next.
As someone who's been as someone who's been covering the case closely since the beginning, for those who may not be familiar, can you give us kind of a rough overview of the legal dispute between Lively and Baldoni?
Well, I mean, everybody's suing everybody for different things, but at the heart of it, it's Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni. Like, if you're coming into this case and you're wanting to know what it's about, you'll get confused really quickly if you try to follow the pleadings. What this is about is essentially control, manipulation of PR, smear campaigns, fraud, breach of contract, sexual harassment complaints. There is rich theories about why certain things were happening. One popular narrative that I've been tracking is this idea that Blake Lively wanted to wrestle control of this movie. It Ends With Us. She had designs on doing that very early on, and she was willing to wrestle creative control from Justin Baldoni and the Wayfarer parties by any means necessary. And the way she got around to doing that was to try this smear campaign or whatever. And then, at first it started out as these breach of contract types of issues. There were multiple contracts that were presented for her signature that she strategically refused to sign. She has had a legal team led by this lady named Ezra that everybody seems to be familiar with, who is a shrewd litigator. And as the narrative goes, one of the people on her, namely Ezra, on her legal team, has headed an activist organization that was familiar with this new statute 47.1 or AB 933, which stood for this proposition that it was designed to protect prospective victims of sex crimes. That if you were to defend yourself and you were to use the cause of action defamation, should you lose your cause of action, then you would be penalized with these fee-shifting provisions that would impute treble damages, meaning triple whatever the damages were going to be on the loser, meaning attorney fees and costs, actual damages, prospective damages, and all the other kinds of damages, is very punitive. That's a key aspect of the litigation. So curious, though, is that the lawsuit was brought before the Second Circuit in federal court in New York, but they availed themselves of this brand new statute in California, some would argue as a prophylactic measure against what they had anticipated was going to be a defamation cause of action unrelated to sex crimes on the part of Justin Baldoni. He's like, okay, fine, sue us for that if you want, but 47.1. And so now we have that going on. There was sham lawsuits that were filed in New York for the explicit purpose of issuing subpoenas without giving anybody notice so that they could accumulate evidence. I'm literally just going over the basics, but I feel like it's already getting people.
You're spinning a web for sure.
Yeah.
But, it's not one that, I've heard that as well. Maybe, Raquel, you can speak to it a bit more if you've heard kind of the same thing as well, like that kind of theory.
Not so much that theory. I mean, I just was following it as a fan of pop culture. Mm-hmm. I read the book, I saw the movie. I'm not sure if you saw the movie.
I have not, nor have I read the book.
Yeah, for me, this whole thing is just so crazy because the movie, I think, does not even warrant any of this attention.
I guess that was my secondary question, right? Is any of this even worth it? Control of a movie, right?
Yeah.
For a movie that I think is a Rotten Tomato sitting around like
sure
50-60%. It's not like you're wrestling control like a franchise.
Well, I think that that was Blake Lively's intent. I think that when she was speaking about this movie back in 22 or 23, long before production ever started, she envisioned this movie, whatever you think of its merits, becoming a franchise. And, spawning multiple films, basically $1 billion proposition over many years. It wasn't just a one-off for her. She wanted to do a second and third take of it. I mean, just create this franchise. And that was her vision, some would say, all along. Now, look, we could speculate about her motives, but that's essentially Baldoni and Friedman's, what it appears to be that they are going for in terms of narrative. Like, what was the point of all of this? Like, is it really, you asked the question, was it worth all of that? Well, if you believe that it's going to spawn $1 billion franchise, some would argue, hell yeah, it is. And so keep in mind, we talk about breach of contract stuff. The 47.1 stuff is really important because you look at the reasons why she's filing for sexual harassment. And then she had that 17-point list. And she's saying things. It was because, well, one of the guys showed me the video of the afterbirth of him and his wife. I invited somebody into my trailer, and when they were in there, I was pumping. And while I was pumping, I felt like they tried to cop a look, and I was offended, even though they came in at her invitation while she was pumping, like she was trying to set him up. She was offended because Justin Baldoni had recommended a personal trainer that specialized in weight loss. And she's like, are you trying to fat shame me? Was literally one of her retorts. And so it's like this ridiculous line of weird sexual harassment complaints that some would argue that any reasonable person by an objective measure would think were frivolous or just a little bit beyond the pale for what a normal cause of action like that would be. And then you ask the question, so why would she do that then? Because of 47.1, because it was a statutory protection that Baldoni could not defeat. It's been this brand new law. We have no case law on it. And it just creates all of this additional protections and anxiety for Baldoni to go forward with this cause of action where he's seeking $400 million. And so
I guess, you kind of touched on the next question, which was, strengths and weaknesses of each of their cases, right? Yeah. Obviously, I think as people have really sat with Lively's case, maybe they're, especially the pop culture aspect, people are really poking holes in these things, like you pointed out, as in terms of like those 17 points. Right. Are there any strengths to her case outside of, you mentioned this unprecedented, is there anything there that works in her favor?
Well, I mean, I think the strengths of her case is in the high degree of difficulty in proving Justin's claims, meaning Justin is trying to sue her for fraud, for breach of contracts that were never signed, and then he kept on acquiescing to changes that she would suggest. And so how do you find breach of contract when you keep on agreeing to her breaches, basically? It's hard to prove fraud. It's hard to prove defamation. As far as strengths to sexual harassment, I don't see it. To the extent that some of her claim is that Baldoni and his team of PR people, the Wayfarer parties, attempted to smear her image. I guess maybe there's something to that if you believe some of the text messages that came out and try to spin them a certain way, but I haven't seen like anything definitive that leads me to believe that she has a strong case. If anything, I think that she has an uphill battle. And I'm not even saying that Baldoni has a winning case. He has a stronger case than her, but it's going to be difficult to prove based on his pleadings unless something comes out in the discovery what he's claiming. And what I've said from the inception is that this case is much less about sexual harassment and much more about how public relations is conducted in Hollywood or in areas of great public interest. When they go back and study this case in law school, nobody's going to care about the sexual harassment claims. This is going to be about how you navigate PR. And I feel like that's going to be this case's legacy. And as far as strengths and weaknesses, yeah, I think Lively is struggling a bit, and she's litigating as if she has the weaker case. And that's come out in some of the stuff, the letters to the judge and, the request for sanctions and all that kind of stuff. But, that's a different question.
Yeah, I mean, again, just from the pop culture point of it all, taking out the legal aspect of it, even sitting and talking to my friends about the case and everything that's coming out about it, the main thing that we've been talking about is just the PR of it all and how her claim started as, them pointing to a tweet that someone liked about, how Hailey Bieber's image was ruined on Twitter, and him allegedly saying, can we do something like this against Blake Lively? So
Yeah.
seeing the spiral of, for me, like seeing it on social media, and how, one day everyone's Team Blake when the case first came out, and how Justin Baldoni is ruining her image and tarnishing her, and, maybe she's going to lose jobs and bookings. And, the next week it's about, oh, well, now they're saying that, Blake Lively really did this and she was trying to take control of the movie. And like you said before, like there was a video of a voice memo of Justin Baldoni, saying that he was in the basement of the premiere of the movie and he wasn't allowed to even be in the screening. So just seeing like social media's interplay of the case, and, like everyone's reactions, and how, the audience keeps shifting its perspective of who has the stronger case. That point of view, it's been really interesting to see how it ebbs and flows in like public opinion.
Look at her initial complaint when she filed it. We had no background on Justin Baldoni. I didn't even know who he was. I didn't even know who Blake Lively was, for that matter. But, you come to read her complaints like, oh, I guess he was inappropriate on set and he took some liberties during a kissing scene, I guess, and fat shaming and going into her trailer unannounced. It sounds really bad. But then his lawyer, Brian Friedman, comes in and publishes this website, and what became his Exhibit A, which was a full and comprehensive timeline full of text message communications and just with full context of everything that was in her pleadings. And it gives the public this other avenue. And you see that Lively basically selectively chose the text messages that she wanted to go into her complaint to make her look better. When you look at it in full context, it doesn't look like it's that at all or inappropriate. And then some of the other stuff that came out. So the intimacy coordinator thing, they had like these extensive meetings and they had drafted how things were going to go or whatever. And then she says that, oh, he just took all of these liberties in the kissing scene. Well, did you know the thing was on film? I don't think she knew that, because when you look at it on film, it paints a much different picture of how that goes. And so for her to suggest that he's taking liberties, and, she didn't even sign the freaking, she waived the presence of the intimacy coordinator. And there was other people on set.
She waived the intimacy coordinator.
The intimacy coordinator was there and they were like, hey, why don't we just wait for it? No, it's fine. Let's just do it now. Kind of how it went down. But there was a cameraman there. There was background people there. There was other people on set. It wasn't just the two of them. And it was on film. And so for her to make these claims and people seeing the actual footage, like, what is she on about? And then people start looking at her sideways. And then they start trashing Justin Baldoni and his image. And the more they try to do that, the more people started to sympathize with Justin in his fight against Blake Lively. And that's, more than anything, spun the narrative. Because Lively, even now, she just gives that speech where she's nominated as one of the 100 most influential women, I guess, or whatever that was. And she goes on about, it was for completely something else, but she goes on and makes this speech about how she is a champion for women's rights. And people that I represent in court that are actual victims of these crimes, like, she don't represent me. We don't claim this woman. You and I are not the same. We have not experienced the same things.
So you brought up something interesting. I just want to, before we get too far off of it,
Sure.
You brought up like Baldoni's lawyer, putting up this website, right? Is this the future of attorneys who are handling these kinds of, the bleak future? You have to learn how to code and everything. But is it the bleak future of this to essentially also litigate in the court of public opinion? I know it's always kind of been that way, but it feels like now more than ever, you got to be essentially working two angles.
Well, it's pretty hard. I mean, we're navigating from laws that were written like in the 50s and 60s about how to control PR. Back then, the internet wasn't a thing. You got to watch channel 2, 4, and 7 or whatever, CBS, NBC, and ABC. I don't even know. But social media wasn't a thing, and information travels much faster. Everybody knows about this case, whether or not you know who these people are or not, and it's because of how it's been litigated in the PR. And so, I think that there's a bunch, and it's more dangerous now with AI because they're literally making fake clips of things, and we don't know. It's gonna get to a point where we don't even know what's real or not. But what's going to become most important is going to be in-court presentation and being able to tackle false narratives. That's really where the evolution is happening. But PR, you almost have to. If you're taking a high-profile case like this, if you're not litigating it in the press, when it's advantageous to do so, you're almost doing yourself a disservice. If Friedman didn't come out with that website and we just were left with the pleadings, I mean, some would read this like, hey, this is bullshit. But there's others that would be like, still thinking that these were valid claims. And, it'd be a lot more, there would be a rumbling, but it wouldn't be like these waves of hatred that have come towards Blake Lively because they kind of see her claims for what they are, which is strategic and not at all genuine.
Okay.
So I don't know if that answers
No, I think it did. Like I said, I think it's just kind of the future. Obviously, more and more it's become like, again, these, because I can't remember. I think Baldoni's also suing Lively's lawyer, if I'm not mistaken, or is it the other way around?
Everybody is suing everybody. There's lawsuits. They're not suing the lawyers per se, but like the New York Times is involved in the lawsuit. Stephanie Jones and Jennifer Abel and all of these other side missions to the main trial. Everyone's suing everybody for different things. Yeah. So, but that's going, like I said, all of that is about PR. It's about smear campaigns, PR tactics, and how it's litigated in light of defamation, where you could just make claims and put stuff out there, basically placing things in false light or in improper context to damage somebody's reputation or ability to work in the industry going forward. That's, the meat and potatoes of this case, but everybody's caught up in the sexual harassment of this case, which I feel like is subservient to the other issues from a legal perspective. This case is going to be won or lost in the communications. I think that the sexual harassment stuff, if it doesn't get dismissed outright for some reason, and I don't think it is, because I don't think that Friedman wants it to get dismissed, but this case is not going to be won or lost on the strength of Lively's sexual harassment claims. I think that the chances that those succeed after a full-on jury trial is pretty slim based on what they got approved. And but where there is a legitimate beef is with the contract stuff, smear campaigns, the PR stuff, all of those other things. Civil extortion, those kinds of claims.
So I would be remiss if I didn't kind of bring up the kind of thing that made it that's bringing this case back into like the public consciousness today, and that is the Taylor Swift of it all. Saying her name instantly buys us like 30 listens. So gotta bring it up at least once. Involving her obviously kind of brought this back to the public attention. Can you explain the circumstances maybe around her subpoena and what happened there? Then it's withdrawal, I believe.
Well, it gets withdrawn. The reasons why it was withdrawn is, it's speculative because I don't know the reasons why they withdrew it. Maybe she just didn't have anything relevant to say. I mean, really, the whole mystery with the Taylor Swift stuff was this idea that she was being extorted by Lively's attorneys or certain individuals from certain law firms saying, if you don't cooperate with us, then we're going to expose 10 years of text messages. And then Brian Friedman wrote a letter to the judge trying to explain why he was subpoenaing certain records. And he's like, look, I heard it on good authority that they are trying to extort Taylor Swift at the threat of releasing 10 years of text messages, whatever that means. And what he basically says in his letter was, if this is bullshit, I will drop it. But if it's not, I owe a duty to pursue this subpoena. And so she gets caught up into that. And I'm guessing that she was subpoenaed for the purposes of exposing the strategic maneuvers of Lively's PR team to try to get her to say false statements or positive things about Blake Lively. And so that if they were to get her in a deposition and say, hey, were you ever approached by Blake Lively or Ryan Reynolds or anybody in her sphere who may have been an agent of one or both of them to give false statements regarding Blake Lively to the press? Like, did they tell you to say nice things about her in the press? Did they tell you to say that she's such this talented person, creative person? Did they ever extort you? Did they ever do, whatever they did? Did they ever speak negatively of Justin Baldoni and ask you to do the same? Those kinds of questions. And when they figured out that she wasn't really going to say any of those things, maybe then they just withdrew it, because what's the point of all of this? It's going to create a circus. We're not going to get anywhere with the extortion stuff. It's unrelated to the lawsuit. There's no merit to bringing in any of her testimony. And so it's not what we were looking for, so we withdraw. But the salaciousness of it all was in the extortion stuff, right? Oh, what do you mean 10 years of text messages? And in that, and imagine somebody looking through all of your text messages for 10 years. At what point are we limiting them?
I saw something early on of why I thought they were subpoenaing Taylor Swift. Something that was on Justin Baldoni's website was, Blake Lively sort of having a meeting in her apartment with Ryan Reynolds there. And, people allege that it was also Taylor Swift. And at the apartment, they had a meeting where she was rewriting a scene in the script. And he felt pressured because of, Taylor Swift's star power to, go along with Blake Lively suggestions for the edit of the script, and then her referring to like Taylor Swift as one of her dragons in like a text message that she was sending Justin Baldoni, and how she has people in her corner. And just, when you think of Taylor Swift, you just think of someone who, like, she really has such an immense like influence over pop. So
President tweets at her, gives an endorsement to the other side,
yeah, I thought the subpoena might have been stemming from that, but
But think about, like, if that's the reason why. So she's going to go in there and she's going to testify to what? That she was able to visibly see that Baldoni felt uncomfortable. Most people, when they feel uncomfortable in a business situation, tend not to show it. And if you're going to testify, oh, I thought he looked nervous. Why? What was he doing? Was he doing this? Was he shaking? Was he like blinking his eyes a lot? Was he stuttering with his words? How do you know he felt nervous? Like, what did he do exactly? There's no benefit to that. It's all speculative, and she's not an expert on human psychology. And so I'm guessing if they withdrew the subpoena and the purpose of the subpoena was because they wanted to demonstrate how Taylor Swift was weaponized against Justin Baldoni, that they just knew they weren't going to get what they were looking for and they were barking up the wrong tree. And there's plenty of other people that are going to come in and say that and say it better. That's my theory. And of course, I don't know for sure because I wasn't in on those discussions.
Yeah, of course. Well, again, just in the interest of your time here, we do have like kind of one monster of a question for you.
Sure.
Trial's currently scheduled for March 2026.
Mm-hmm.
Based on what we know so far, I know you've touched on this briefly. What are the possible outcomes you see? In parentheses, predictions, guesstimations, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, no official saying this is definitely going to happen. But where do you see things landing after the fallout of this?
I mean, normally I would say like a lawsuit like this ends up settling like 9 out of 10 times. But I see no evidence that Brian Friedman or Justin Baldoni are interested in a settlement. I feel like they're going to beat themselves up over discovery and depositions for the next however many months it takes. If this does go to trial, it's going to be a national spectacle, man. You remember Johnny Depp, that trial, and how crazy that got. This is going to be that times two, just because even in the years since Johnny Depp, social media has grown. The internet has grown. AI is becoming a thing now. Information gets out much faster. And so Blake Lively has now been tagged as this person that's due for cancellation by his subset of individuals that are wanting to demonize her, and they've chosen Justin's side. There's still a smaller group of people that support her and will support her no matter what. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if this is going to get, I don't think it's going to get settled. What I think is going to happen is likely it goes to trial or we get on the eve of trial. If it settles, it's going to be around then. It's going to be sometime next year. But let's just say that this goes to trial. What I can see happening is all of the causes of action related to sexual harassment are they're dropped. Not guilty as to those causes of action. Mm-hmm. What they're really going to start examining is all of the other stuff, which is the breach of contract, the fraud, the civil extortion, the smear campaigns, all that kind of thing. A jury's going to have to pick up on that, and who knows what kind of evidence they're going to get. I don't know how long they're going to sit in testimony, but just basing it off of Exhibit A, you're looking at like a 6-week trial, maybe a couple of months, maybe more, maybe less, I don't know. And they're going to have to sift through all of these messages. The jury's going to get tired and frustrated with this case. I can honestly see a world where none of the causes of action are granted because the jury thinks that, you know what, this is all just like, what are we doing here?
I think that's where people find themselves.
I think that it's more likely than not that Justin will prevail. I think it's more likely than not that Justin prevails on his fraud, extortion, defamation causes of action. I think that he's going to be awarded an amount of money close to what he's seeking. And then I could also see a world where Blake Lively is awarded certain causes of action related to civil extortion, breach of contract, fraud, whatever, smear campaigns, that cancels out the Baldoni causes of action and is awarded a similar amount of money, and then competing judgments, and then whoever gets awarded more is the winner. I don't know. I guess what I'm trying, I know I'm rambling. It's just, I have no idea what's going to happen. I have no idea.
No, yeah, that's where.
Yeah, my prediction though is that I believe that Justin Baldoni will prevail on some of his causes of action, which will award him a substantial amount of money. And I'm not discounting the possibility that Lively's also going to prevail on some of her stuff. I don't think it's going to be on the sexual harassment stuff. And if it is, I would be beyond shocked that you could prevail with this much evidence on a sexual harassment claim based on those facts. I would be shocked. stunned.
Yeah, I think you brought up a like just kind of an interesting parallel with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. I think maybe even if they kind of cancel out after all is said and done,
Yeah.
Johnny Depp's now his star is maybe back on the rise a bit,
Yeah.
and Amber Heard's definitely slid down after this.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe we're already seeing that. I don't know, Raquel, if you want to speak to that as well, maybe a bit. Where does that leave us?
I mean, as terms of like Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, like you said before, I don't think many people knew who Justin Baldoni was before this movie came out. I think a lot more people knew about Blake Lively, but even, and I'm not sure of what her status of her upcoming projects are, but I remember like reading when this first started coming, when all of the claims started coming out, that she had like a couple slated projects on like her IMDb page for, that were going to be in production. Like, who knows if those are still going to, continue, or if they're going to be paused until this whole case blows over and she's able to redeem her name in public opinion a little bit. I don't know where Justin Baldoni goes. I think he wanted to be more of a director than an actor anyways, but I think it depends on the outcome of the case and, how the public feels and how social media takes it and runs with it and interprets it and the videos that they make. I think it comes down to ultimately.
Yeah, as far as Johnny Depp, that case is concerned with Amber Heard. Look, everybody turned on Amber Heard because of how she came off in court. And also her attorneys weren't very good. There was evidence in that case that didn't make it in because their attorneys, I don't want to say that they were incompetent. I'm confused why some of the stuff that was discussed in court was found to be inadmissible. Like, for example, Johnny Depp kicking her in the back, causing her to fall down. Like, that is an act of domestic violence, and nobody seemed to care because Amber Heard was found to be this incredible liar. And there's plenty of video about her doing other stuff like slapping Johnny Depp and then him like carrying on about it. She's like, oh, I just slapped you or whatever she said, or that famous clip. But people took her side in irrational ways, and some of it was well-deserved because she did lie about things, but it doesn't mean that Johnny Depp was a saint. It's just the way that the public flocked to denigrate her name, and I don't even know what kind of career she has now, but much in danger of something similar because now we got this 47.1 thing to contend with, and there's amicus briefs in this case, not the Heard case, the Lively case, where people are arguing for the merits of 47.1, where it's like, hey, we need this statute because it's preventing women from being silenced based on frivolous defamation claims, failing to realize that there's frivolous claims, but there's also legitimate claims. And are we now going too far in the other direction where we are constitutionally violating people with legitimate defamation claims because we're imposing these unnecessary damages that we usually reserve for actual frivolous cases, not cases where it could go either way, like where there's a jury that could reasonably find defamation. We're just saying if you lose, then treble damages, which is kind of unconstitutional by the way that we've done things for hundreds of years now.
So maybe this will establish some sort of case law, or
this is going to establish that. Yeah. So I guess I kind of take it back when I talk about the sexual harassment claim not being the legacy of this case, but maybe not. And so far as 47.1, a brand new statute in California, is going to be affected by this case. Perhaps, if this goes to trial and the judge rules a certain way and makes certain findings based on 47.1, it's going to sway the direction of that statute for years to come. So there's that.
Well, we would we'd love to have you back on once this is kind of all said and done to kind of recap and see how right we were.
Sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Omar, for being on. If people want to find you, where can they do so?
I have a YouTube channel, The Tilted Lawyer. I'm on Instagram, but the best way is just to find me on YouTube. My channel is called The Tilted Lawyer. We post shows, 3, 4, 5 times a week, depending on stuff. I just did a show last night on Blake Lively. We've done like mock depositions of Blake Lively. Have the people that joined my show, and like I had somebody playing Blake Lively and I was deposing her. It was all in good fun. It was kind of ridiculous, but it was a lot of laughs. We do some serious commentary about the legal issues in the case. We talk about other stuff. There's this Laura Owens case that we're covering. I'm actually going to be doing an interview with Rachel Orris from the Hot Bench to talk about the Laura Owens case. Later today around 5 o'clock, if you wanted to check that out. But other than that, The Tilted Lawyer is probably just typing that into Google would be the best way to find me.
Fantastic. Thank you again, Omar. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. It was a pleasure. And thank you folks for having me on.